When I'm not pretending to pay attention to my students when they're telling me about their Destiny raids, I like to answer questions that I get on YouTube, so let's get to it. Love your work, Sean. Quick question. How do you structure your practice routine? Do you focus more on songwriting or learning new songs and building exercises around those songs in order to be able to play them? Thanks, Herman. That's a really good question. I feel like my practice routine varies drastically from month to month, and it kind of depends on what I'm involved in. Like some weeks, I'll just kind of like feel like I want to get faster and build up a lot of speed, and in that case, I just kind of like play with the metronome or a drum loop and just like do scales and maybe kind of like jump in between shapes and stuff like that. I would say most of the time, though, my personal practicing at this point is more like writing exercises, and that's just kind of like cycling through different like chord voicings and trying to find things that are like interesting to me at this point, because I've been doing a lot more writing and like producing other artists and stuff and helping them with their writing too. And especially since I started doing the channel, I have more of an outlet for projects that I might come up with. So my practice routine is a lot different than it was back in the day when I feel like I was still kind of like growing and learning a lot more. And I mean, you never really stop learning, but I think the main difference was I don't really do exercises as much anymore, and I try to put what I do know into context more. So again, this is kind of like combining chords and licks together and maybe just trying to write stuff from, different like modal stuff like we've been talking about and things like that. But I definitely think I was only able to get to the point where I feel like I'm at now because I took the time to really go up and down the major scale and the minor scale and do arpeggios through the neck and stuff like that. So even though I don't really practice in kind of like a routine like I used to, I think more of it's not now. It's more of like an ear training and like a mental thing that I kind of do nowadays. You're a musician and you've never done drugs. Head explodes. So this is kind of in reference to last week when the revelation that I've never tried drugs was revealed on the QA. And again, by no means am I trying to like sound all high and mighty or casting judgment on anybody at all. I hope it didn't come off that way. But yes, it's not something I've ever tried. Also, interestingly enough, some more fun facts about Sean Daniel. I've never tried alcohol ever once, which is another weird one that people don't really expect. And I've also never worn blue jeans. So what are you going to do about that? Question, as far as recommendations working on scales, do you think about forms or shapes, or are you strictly thinking about the notes that are in the scale itself, or some combination of both? So the cool thing about scales is everybody kind of has a different approach to them. And I think of scales strictly as forms and shapes, right? So if I know I'm going to do a minor scale thing, I'll get into like a minor scale shape. And then if I'm playing around in there, I'm searching through the shape for the note that my ear is looking for. So I'm never consciously like thinking, oh, E, I've got to get to an E, and thinking of like where a specific note is in a scale. I kind of get to a shape, and then I just kind of feel through it. And I think having done that for a long time, I kind of feel like I'm at a point where behind the scenes, I know the notes kind of without consciously thinking them, and I can get to where I'm going. And because I know the forms so well, or I feel like I know the forms pretty well, I can just kind of hit what I'm thinking without having to think about it, if that makes sense. So I think that can be kind of like a daunting thing to think about, because I remember when I was first like learning scales and trying to apply them, it was really, really difficult for me. And I had no idea what I was doing. I'm like, do I really have to know that this is a C and this is an E and this is an A, and I have to like think about this in real time, like over like an A minor chord? It was never really like that for me. It was just kind of like screwing around inside of a shape, inside of a form, and then just doing it and practicing enough, your brain just kind of makes these connections. At least this is how it worked for me. Behind the scenes, where I can kind of play the common tones of a chord without having to think, oh, I need to get to like the minor third in this shape or whatever. At a point, your hands will just get to know these shapes and forms well enough that you can just play it without thinking about it. Like if I'm just kind of like listening to a piece of music and trying to play along with it, and then I tried to tab out what I was doing without looking at my hand, I literally couldn't do it because my hand is just kind of taken over, and all the years of muscle memory and practice have just kind of like coalesced into being able to play fluidly. And again, that's just my own personal experience. I know a lot of people take a more thoughtful mathematical approach to it, and everybody's different, but this is kind of how I've done it. What are your favorite effects pedals, and how would you suggest ordering a chain of pedals? So I've talked a little bit about effects in the past, and I kind of have a love-hate relationship with effects. To a certain point, I kind of appreciate it when I can more organically just use like an amps distortion and reverb and then just have that be it and not have to think about it, because once I kind of get into the pedal thing, it's like I go real deep down the rabbit hole, which I know I'm not alone in this. So I almost kind of have to be in a mindset of like pedals or no pedals. So eventually I'm going to do more like pedal demos and stuff on the channel coming soon, because my buddy Justin, who you've seen in the arpeggio videos and some other things, he is like the pedal man. Like he knows basically everything. He gets into like the weird stuff. Like I think he's ordering like a custom pedal from some German dude who like lives in like the mountains. I think he just put in an order for those. So we're gonna kind of do a lot more of those. But again, my personal favorite is I love the Electro Harmonics ones a lot. The Big Muff especially will always hold a special place in my heart. The Zvex Fuzz Factory is a pretty awesome pedal that is kind of hard to tame. I really like the EHX Micropog. I think I'm probably gonna do a demo on that pretty soon, because I think that kind of like adds, man, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's a polyoctave generator, so it kind of adds like a thickness if you use the low one. I'll probably do a demo on that soon. I'm so stoked because Justin just ordered this Chase Bliss warped vinyl pedal, which is fantastic. I'll actually put a link to a demo on that you can check out in the meantime until we actually get our hands on it, because it's a pretty awesome pedal. Again, at this point, I kind of like just really weird pedals, I suppose. As far as ordering, I think I'll probably talk more about this later when I do like a video on the pedal board. But again, usually like distortions and compressors and stuff kind of come first. The more atmospheric stuff kind of comes later on. But another thing I've learned too is like, there's no one way to do anything. Like really just screwing around will kind of like help you find your own sound, and you know, order them however you want. I mean, there is kind of like a traditional way to do things, but again, just like everything else, it's all just kind of like plug and play and experimenting. How about Nick Drake? How about Nick Drake? Nick Drake is the man. Again, I kind of went through like 4 phases of music that kind of like stepped up how into music I was. I think it all started with Jimi Hendrix. He was the guy that kind of like inspired me to learn guitar when I was like a senior in high school. And then from there, I kind of leapt to Elliott Smith, and I feel like Elliott Smith was the one that got me like into like songwriting and kind of taught me that's something I really wanted to do. Then I had my Zeppelin phase, like so many of us go through, and that was just, I was kind of getting more into like music overall and not just guitar playing through Zeppelin. And then eventually I got into Radiohead, and that just kind of like blew my mind as far as like what was possible alternatively, etc. So Nick Drake especially, I kind of discovered in the Elliott Smith days, because he gets compared, those two get compared a lot, fair, unfair, whatever. But Nick Drake is a fantastic player, kind of really ahead of his time as far as like acoustic guitar players go, experimenting with like different tunings and stuff like that and songwriting. It's a little sad, it's trending on the sad side. Again, another guy that kind of like killed himself, but he left so much awesome music before he went. So yeah, huge Nick Drake fan. So for listening homework, we're going to go to one of the more well-known Nick Drake songs, Riverman. It's been covered a lot. Definitely the first song that I ever heard and knew was in 5/4. So when I think I heard it when I was like 19, probably for the first time, and I tried to play it, and it was really hard, because if you've never played a song in 5/4 before, it's kind of a beast. But it's a great practice tool to be able to play in different timings. So I'm going to link you to a tab and a video of Nick Drake Riverman, because it's just a crazy awesome song. And he's got a lot of great, Saturday Sun is another personal favorite of mine. He's got a lot of great ones. His albums are good top to bottom. Like if you kind of like that sound, you'll kind of like everything he does, in my opinion. If you don't, whatever, it's all good. But any questions or comments you have, please leave them below, and I will get to them as soon as I can. Thanks.